I'm trying. I'm
All
trying
right.
to see who's on.
All right. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whether you're joining us live today or watching it on YouTube. This is Dr. Jim Gumbo Coughlin. Welcome to another Lagniappe leadership discussion. Lagniappe stands for a little something extra, and that's what we try to bring each month. And this month is no stranger to that, as we are fortunate to have Brigadier General T.A. Adams, Terrence T.A. Adams, joining us tonight as we talk about leadership and talent. General Adams currently serves as the Director Cyberspace Operations and Warfighting Communications at Headquarters Air Force A26. His duty title is really so much longer that it fills up 2 business cards, but we'll just did the abridged edition. You can see he's normally found with a solid smile on his face, as you can see in all the pictures we're using here today. But he joined the Army straight out of high school, and then was commissioned in the Air Force via ROTC at, this is hard for me to say, Auburn University, but in Montgomery, Alabama. He's commanded the 33rd Combat Comm Squadron, the 379th Expeditionary Comm Squadron. He was deputy commander of Joint Communications Support Elements. He commanded the 375th Communications Group, commanded the 628th Air Base Wing. He won the 2020 Military Service Award, the 2022 Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, and there's so much more to him than just that. And so, sir, I want to welcome you to our Lagniappe Leadership Discussion number 7. We're very fortunate to have you with us tonight. I do want to say before we get started that as we have this conversation, anything that's spoken about by the participants is our own opinions. It does not reflect the opinions of the U.S. federal government, the United States Air Force, or the organization we're members of. And how this format goes for everybody joining us is we'll kind of talk, General Adams and I'll talk. I get to ask in the first question, and then those that are joining us live can type in questions in chat. And we'll go from there. Sir, I'll field those questions to you, so you don't have to worry about reading them. And we'll go from there. So, sir, I did a brief intro on you, but tell us something about you that's not in the bio.
Not in the bio. Let's see. I got activated with Desert Storm. I don't know if that's in there. When I was in my Army Reserve unit and had to pull out of school for that. I was stationed at Pentagon for 9/11. I used to be cool back in the day. I think I'm gonna like develop some t-shirts like used to be cool kind of shirt, right? So because I'm finding that I know nothing that's going on in the world now. Does anybody know Honey Badger or Christina Brig? Anybody know her?
Yeah.
She's like a driver. I mean, I do most of my work for her nowadays. And so I was just in the Pentagon working for her. That's why I'm just getting home late. So, and that's why I'm not cool anymore, because of Christina. But life is good. I'm trying to think anything else. I was in the Whoop There It Is video. If you know Tag Team Whoop There It Is.
Yeah.
Yep, you can see me in there. What else? That's about it. Is that enough there, Gumbo?
Well, I mean, that's pretty legit. I mean, you're the first guest who's probably in a music video, and that was back when MTV actually showed videos. Remember those days?
Oh, back
maybe your shirt says "I was cool when MTV showed music."
It was really, I was in my fraternity. I'm in a yellow, green, and red striped shirt, or blocks of yellow, green, and red or something for my fraternity. I was in there doing some stuff back in Atlanta back in the day.
We might have to check that out and maybe put that in the
No, we don't want anybody to know. I don't mention it. You asked, you got a small audience here, so I said, why not share?
Hey, you know, once it's on the internet, although Abe Lincoln did say, don't believe everything you read on the internet. So you never
don't believe it.
Okay, sir. So, we're going to talk about leadership and talent. And you were in Colorado Springs a couple of weeks ago for the Rocky Mountain Cyber Symposium. And then you had full chocks to go do your bazillion jobs with your 7 hats you wear. But, the concept of talent leadership, talent management, or talent leadership came up. And that's really kind of your bailiwick right now, right? You're responsible for, a very important AFSC, Air Force Specialty Code, to me, of course, and actually to everybody that's on with us right now in Honey Badger, and the like. And so, how do you define talent and leadership from your lens?
Yeah, so leadership is, to me, it's the ability to get people to do what you want them to do. And then I say, and like it. I had the like it part in there because like if you can really present something and influence people to do a job or to take a task, and they're going to enjoy that task, you don't have to watch them. There's very little accountability you have to do, for them. They're going to be motivated. They're going to be eager. Why? Because you've kind of presented it. It's almost like parents trying to get kids to eat the spinach, right? You got to wrap it into something, right? And so I try to wrap it into love and care and purpose, right? I think when you give people purpose, you find out what they love to do. It's easy to try to get them to lead. Now you bring in the talent thing, like many of us, including me, you may not be born with, some people are kind of born with this natural skill to lead. Some people are taught that, but we all are good at something. I believe our maker has given us talent. I think the wise leaders try to discover what is that talent thing, what is that natural ability that we can find in our formations, and they're able to pull that out of the individuals. But all of this takes time, and many, I think today we don't necessarily have, or let me not say that, we don't prioritize our time to do it. I think there's still the same amount of time that it was since the beginning of time. It's just that we've allowed other things to come into, what we believe to be important. And I want to just continue to focus on people. So my style is is not necessarily all around about the technology, but about the people. The technology will continue to change. And we're gonna, at least for now, right? We're gonna still need people. I know some of the mad scientists out there may have a plan for not using people in the future, but for right now, we're gonna still need these things called people. They are complex, and they need to be motivated and learn how to use them in different ways. And I think that's what we're challenged in our military environment, is that we really haven't tapped into the ability to do that with, and I think every generation, the culture of the generations, the pluses and minuses of the generations, right? Everybody's the next generation is always the bad generation, right? And so because it's always different. And our job is to understand that we sit in the middle of those generations, at least from my standpoint. And my leadership tenets are listen, live, love. My ability to listen to people and listen to the youth is so key and important, because if not, then I'll be giving them advice based on my time in, and that is dated and old. And I'm not the future of the Air Force, and I'm not going to be the one perhaps that may lead that next generation to any type of high-end conflict. It's probably going to be somebody junior to me. And so what are we doing to prepare those people, giving them the development, the skills, the training, the experiences they need? So that's what I'm trying to do for our career field, trying to do it in a unique way, trying to challenge the status quo, trying to push against the bureaucracy. And as you know, that's hard. So I hope that answered, your question, at least gave some other people something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to hit back on something you said earlier, because I've heard you say this before, and there's the difference between love and care, right? And and you have a great kind of vignette perspective on that. And so, would you mind sharing, in your word, why do you use the word love in an environment in which that's not common?
Yeah. So for me, love is the most powerful word in the English language. It is an opportunity for us to connect with people. But for some reason in our formations, like in our homes, for whatever reason, love's okay. Coming to the office, love's not okay. Why? I mean, and sometimes it's only a few feet away too, right? It could be less than a mile away. You may walk to work, and then you get into this environment where love not accepted. And I just, it's foreign. Like we have been taught, I think, just bad, given some bad habits, bad traditions. So to me, is that if we say that this military thing is a family, then I believe that families, a core component of family is love. And so I think if we had a foundation of love and we talked about it more, the illities, the things that we are plagued with, from sexual assault or sexual harassment, with suicidal traits. I mean, we really in like engulfed our organizations with a loving environment, focused on the mission. I think that we would find some different outcomes if we truly treated, the airmen to the left and right of us as our brother and or our sister, or anybody that's non-binary too. I think that we would find perhaps different outcomes if we really truly care for them at that level. But somebody's got to introduce that into that workplace and remind us that we are connected and we are close, and that we can do it differently, and that love is powerful, it's not weak. Vulnerability is strength, and those are the things again that we are following old bad narratives. And I think we need leaders who will introduce new narratives that will be an example of what loving leadership could do. Same thing we talk about if you are a parent or if you love anybody. Sometimes love is discipline. Love is saying no, right? Love is not this kind of powder puff thing that I think many people think it is. It is not. And so and then I also have to remind people that I do realize that many people have not been loved, and so they can't demonstrate it. I do know that. I know that many people have been hurt, and hurt people will hurt people. So there's all those kind of things that are in our formation. And the leader's job, right, is to be able to sift through all that, to understand its formation and those who are in it. I believe to focus on their strengths, not on their weaknesses, and then to bring people together. Every deox that I've probably gotten has some component of people feeling not connected to the organization. So this disconnectedness runs through that. We just had it in the organization I'm in. And one of the things that I think will nullify that is a foundation of love that sees every human spirit as an opportunity to connect and an opportunity to execute the mission in a way that I think long lasting, that people will go home and be proud to say they did a great job at work. And on that day that we have to go to battlefield and take it to the enemy and risk somebody's life, and if we lose somebody, we will already be in this environment where we understand the human that's next to them. And that's not a human as black, white, male, female. That is a human, one of the members of our fighting force. And at the foundation of all that is this thing called love. So that's why I talk about it, as much as I can. I don't think it's a bad thing. And again, all the things that I do, I don't bring things up for people to leave thinking like me. Like, I'm not trying to build mini-me's, but I am trying to get people to think. You don't have to leave thinking like me, but you do need to think. And then you need to think, how can you bring some of the connectedness to the table? And so if love is foreign to you, don't use it. But at the foundation of that, you should be thinking about your workforce. How are you going to motivate them? How are you going to lead them? How are they going to be connected? So when you're not there, right, how are they going to be working with their peers, right? And if you don't establish that as a leader, when you're not there, then you left a sucking hole into the leadership apparatus because you didn't build it to be interconnected. And that is going to be, I think, our strength moving forward, to be more interconnected. So I hope I say a lot of stuff there, Gumbo. So I hope I hit on what you remember that I said, because it could be a different version tomorrow.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And like you said, the conversation does evolve or change or fit the perspective. But I kind of want to, we talked about this being about talent. And so as we in organizations normally try to provide a way to codify our talent and then move it up and down. One of the things you talk about with love is more of hard to quantify because it's more of an emotional quotient, right? So we can evaluate IQ pretty easily. We have tests for that. We worked on that. But there's leadership theorem out there that articulates that as you progress in IQ, really the better leaders progress in EQ. And love and connectedness is really something that's more quantifiable on the emotional quotient. So how do you assess talent in a world where we can't quantify those skills, but yet there's so much research that's demonstrative that that's really what we need by some of the, hey, what's your tactical skill? Hey, what's your strat? Hey, how do you quantify? I mean, I too have read Deox where you're like, wow, how's that person still in leadership? And yet they continue to move forward Whereas the climate assessment goes, this is not the climate that I want to be in. There's a great concept out there that says leadership drives culture, culture drives behavior, behavior drives results. And so if you're not getting the results you want, what's the behavior look like? If you don't get the behavior you want, what's the culture look like? If you don't have the culture you need, who's the leader? Right. And so how do you address moving talent forward in an environment where we're really looking at acumen that is not in the EQ?
Yeah, and this is the work I think that we need to do, and where bringing doctors like yourself, sir, that you all can come up with a way to do it. We don't do it because we can't measure it, right? And because we can't measure it, it's hard for the folks. Like we are so focused on what I say, data-driven decisions, and I think we need more heart-driven decisions. But to your point, how do you measure the heart-driven decision? And then, so that's let's make this hard. I believe if we pick commanders based on their ability to be compassionate leaders, to understand people, versus it's this balance. I think we have the balance wrong. I think we pick commanders based on their 70%, but maybe based on their functional skill, and 30% maybe based on people. And I think it should be reversed. I think that we should be looking at command as an opportunity to pick people, because the commander, once you get into the command piece, that this is a lot about the people. I spend more of my time about the people, right? And then you have other people in formation that can continue to help the mission, but there's only a few things that the commander, can do. And we don't end up, when the commander's not doing those things, setting a vision, taking care of the people, then the organization is going to suck. And when it hits a real hard bump, it's going to be more revealed that way. And many times it doesn't hit a hard bump, so it's just not revealed. And some people leave command thinking that they've been the best commander, but they just didn't have that day when that leadership situation happened. So I would want to be able to pick commanders based on their ability to be that kind of people person. Some people shy away from that because it's not in them. They may be an introvert and maybe not want to talk to people. And they want to shy away from the people who are actually going to get the mission done. I'm sure we've all kind of seen that. And so again, it will be impossible to do what I'm saying 100%, because there's no way to recruit all the kind of people that I'm talking about. So we have to find the balance in there, right? But I do know what we don't have are models and ways to find the talent that I'm talking about. So it's easy to go with who was the best pilot. It's easy to go with who was the DG, who had the smartest, who was the highest test, scored the highest in the class. Those things are easier to pick out. But I think in some ways, as being a critic to our service, is that we haven't developed leaders in a way, because we may have been promoting people based on their academic score, and what we need is a love score or a leader score, and we haven't been able to find out how to do the leader score. And some of our DG programs have tried to add in that by peer reviews. But from a diversity standpoint, sometimes the people who don't feel like they belong in a formation because of other factors, then now you don't really get the full output of those folks, because the environment has not been set for those folks to succeed because they never felt like they belong. So this other thing about belonging in an organization pours into it too. So to me, what we need is an organization and a culture, because I think what we're doing is that we're focused on data and we're focusing on policy. And as culture is going to eat policy for lunch on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and Thursday, right? It's going to eat it when it's full, because we focus on, let's try to regulate this, let's put it in writing. And what I'm asking, I know is harder, but if we don't get down to the root, right? If you don't get down to the root, all you're going to do is just continue to give surface answers. And I think that's what we've been for years, is the surface, because digging down to the root is going to take more energy, more time, and we don't have the right tools to dig down to the root. And so that's why I think we need help from industry. We need other, mechanisms to be able to get down to that. and we're just not there. So that's, I maybe gave you too much of an answer there, but follow up if I didn't hit your question right.
No, no, sir. I mean, I think I think you're hitting on the overall challenge, which are measuring the intangibles is hard. And it's a lot easier to measure stuff that's codifiable, and that is not open to interpretation as much, right? Who's the best pilot? Well, there's data that can provide that, right? The DG thing piece, and how do we go through that? And for I love to articulate that in our service we have this great AFI that governs command, right? It's 6 pages, 2 pages don't matter. The first one's the normal cover, the back, and it's really the 4 major graded areas, improving the unit, leading the people, managing resources, executing the mission. Fun facts, though, if you talk to an ID, the one that is measured the highest or most percentage in an ID inspection is improving the unit. What if you join a unit that's crushing and you can't improve it? Does that mean you're not a good leader? So it's a very fascinating dynamic that I learned as a group commander. And coincidentally, that is now a part of our new version of the OPR, which is fun fact that we're getting to try out, especially at my grade. So it's fun time. All right, sir. So I think you hit on that it's hard, but the hard stuff is worth the journey sometimes, and it takes the right leader. So, sir, I want to get to one of the questions. So Bobby types in, he goes, so in your role on the DT, and DT stands for developmental team, and you're assessing who would be good for command, what opportunities do you have to understand the people skills that you just opined about? And do you find that most of the data that you readily have available at the DTs is about functional performance? So, sir, I guess let me just capsulate that. So you're sitting in the developmental team, and for those that are unaware, that's where within the Air Force especially, we get together within our functions, our areas of specialty, and we look at things like who do we select for the next leadership position? Who do we select for specialized schools? Who do we select for specialized programs? And a bunch of leaders in that community get together, and some outside of that community join it. And every candidate is assessed based on a standard established and codified set of norms for that development. And so that's just as an overhead. So, sir, how do we look at those people skills? How do we tease that out when we're trying to select people?
So right now, I mean, great question and timely question. I just had my DT prep session. So tomorrow I kick off the spring DT session. So Gumbo, you'll probably be there. And I'm gonna tell the team. So this, you're getting fresh off, right? This is fresh news that they don't even know. Is that I'm gonna ask them to score using the Airman Leadership Qualities. That's gonna be a new ad, as you are scoring, think through these 4, these graded mission areas that we kind of call them, because that's how we've tried to look at things, and that's where I just reviewed all of my colonels OPRs today as well. So I'm just fresh off of reading those narrative kind of statements, and also trying to prep for the DT. And we're going to give this a stab by looking through the lens of those Airman Leadership Qualities. And we'll see if that kind of helps to change the score. The bigger thing, and I don't know if you were there, Gumbo, before, but we have given, when you go and do a promotion board, the Secretary of the Air Force has this memorandum of instruction that talks about things that we value. But every board member gets to vote on the things that they value based on that. And again, I'm going to introduce them in leadership qualities as another, value proposition to look through the lens of scoring. And then, so to answer the question, I'm not the one picking those members, right? It is a team effort that creates the candidates list. And then after the candidates list, then we try to go out to the hiring authorities and get those folks hired. And we don't have a good tool, because you're right, some go functional, but in the Airman Leadership Qualities, there's nothing that says anything about your function, about your functional career field, right? And so that's why I want to be able to introduce Airman Leadership Qualities as a lens through which you look through your scoring model, and hope that would drive out, scores that's based on different, behaviors. The other thing is that, I'm often trying to figure out how do we find the best talent. And I do know that the scoring process is limited. So say, for example, me being from the Army and thinking through anybody that's coming in from another service, we've done quite a few inter-service transfers. And when those reports hit, the DT, many DT members have never, maybe served with some Army folks. They don't know what a top block is, and so they don't know how to read that report to give it the best score. And we could have the best member in the Air Force now that was, prior signal or something like that in another career field, a corps in the Army, and our inability to understand that record and those documents, that person doesn't score well. So to me, it's an unfair process, but the process is fair. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do I not let that talent go to waste just because we may be inept in understanding, some parts of that record, because then it becomes unfair to the member. And so I'm thinking through that, and we'll have a way, hopefully, Gumbo, this time to be able to adjudicate some of the records that may not score well for whatever reason, and keep that process fair. So I'm trying to finalize that thought process tonight, upon which how to do that. To get at the question, the person who asked the question is, how do we come up with a way to really find the best talent and do that in a fair process? Over.
Yes, sir. I think that was good. I think you got at the heart of what Bobby was asking, and once again, it goes to, that's a challenge, right? How do we make sure that we do this and make it fair, but it also repeatable, right? So,
yeah.
Ultimately, our service will find another place for your talents, and
Yep.
someone will come behind you. And so, how do we make sure it's repeatable? Having had the fortune of going to DTs for the last 3 years, and seeing the person in your seat change, I expect that will change. I'll just leave it at that. So, all right. So the next question comes from Breezy. Breezy's in a joint organization. Matter of fact, you met Breezy about a week and a half ago, likely. And so, her kind of question, I'm going to expand on a little, tighten it up a little bit. So her point is, how do we develop leaders in an organization that we expect to lead at a certain point in their career, let's just say midpoint in their career, if they're really focused technical early? How do we transition that? Within our own career field, we have our 4 different AFSCs, and each one of them lead at different rates. I'm fortunate that in my specialty, it's straight out of the fire. You can be going into combat if you're an expeditionary person, and you can lead a large team. So it's a little bit different than some of our colleagues and some of our other AFSCs. And so, how do we avoid my wording, the freeze-dried leadership, which is your leadership skills were honed in your commissioning source, and then we put them on hold to allow you to work on your technical proficiency, and then we throw you into leadership, and you're like, well, back when I was a cadet, because maybe it wasn't developed as much. And so the same thing would apply to any organization. When I was in Silicon Valley, I saw an organization that would take, hey, you're the best engineer, you should be able to lead engineers. No, that's a different skill set. And so her question is, how do we develop leadership along the way when it's really a time to focus on something different besides?
Yeah, and I would say, unfortunately, so I don't agree. I think we focus on leadership all the time. If you are an officer, we have put you in a position for leadership. That is supposed to be the distinguishing feature between us and some enlisted ranks. And because so we're gonna, again, I think Congress and others are gonna continue to challenge us as we want to have highly skilled folks doing jobs, even in A1, when we having these conversations. They're like, what you just described sounds like an enlisted person, right? So we got to really be cautious of what we're doing. But right now that is the construct that we have, having our officers doing some of these roles. And so that I believe that we need to continue to develop those persons while they're being technical and leading at the same time. But if your day-to-day job is to go in and just be technical, then you may not have the opportunity to do that. And I do know in some of the formations, the grind of the job keeps you just grinding away at this technical thing. But I believe there's always opportunity to lead, right? It may not be, you may not have a duty title that has leadership in it or a position in it, but there's always informal leaders inside a process. And again, if we go back to the definition of leadership, it's influence. So how are you, even when you're in a technical position, how are you leading, trying to influence? And it could be a procedure way of doing something, right? There's still opportunity to lead. The one thing that you don't get a lot of times with the experience of leadership is having large people. The people, I mean, that's where you, I mean, it's the people. I mean, they're really going to challenge you, and that's where you're going to need to have the way to communicate with them, the way to motivate them, and they're all going to be different. But what I do know is that it's all about like a connection with those folks, getting on their level, not being on a high horse, and and learning. You cannot lead the whole organization using the same tool. So here's the thing that I think. I think the two shortfalls that we have not given in this leadership thing is the ability to assess. Many, whether you're technical or not, many leaders lack the ability to assess the environment. And that is the people in the environment, the situation, the nuance, the limits, the organizational structure, the policy, like being able to assess this kind of whole thing. We teach, I think, commanders perhaps in ACSC to develop their vision and all those kind of things before they even know the environment. Like, how are you gonna come up with something when you don't even know the environment upon which you're trying to do? You're just baking something outside of the oven, right? And so you need to wait until you get there. Now you can have some doubts about doing, but I know that so many people roll in with what they did in ACSC with no understanding of the environment, and they wonder why they weren't successful. You didn't assess the environment. We don't talk about the ability to assess. And then the other thing is that in order to assess, you need the right tools. And as a leader, whether you're technical or not, part of this is the thinking's game. You got to be able to think. So have I developed the right tool around the tool belt for you to pull off after you've done your assessment? So the two gaps is some people can assess, and then the ones who can assess, we have not developed the right tool. So they end up using a hammer every time because that's all they got. Right? And they haven't developed multiple tools, whether it's a leadership tool, a technical tool. To me, it works the same. Being able to assess and then be able to determine which tool to use is what I found. And so to me, always leader, whether you're technical or not. I know it can be hard because of different work roles that you may have, but that's the leader's responsibility to find how to lead. I mean, to me, those are the things. Like I had a term called the strategic leader, strategic leadership, but more so try to get to the strategic follower. How do you become the strategic follower? And that is when you are knowing where the boss wants to go. And your job is to know that at this point, I'm a follower using my leadership skills. We don't talk about displacing yourself. We always just talk about like leadership, like you're always going to be a leader. We spend more of our time being followers, but we don't teach followership. Right? It's something we should think about. We're followers, I believe, in more times than we are leaders. So strategic followership says understand the organization, understand your place in the organization, and how can you use your use of self, use of position to be able to follow where the boss is going. Strategic followership is a different lens upon which we should think about leadership in a way that we're going to continue to help push the I think push the narrative of followership through the leadership lens. And I know it could be confusing for some people, but the strategic follower, I used to go and talk to commanders about this that years ago, and I forgot I even had this term, but it really helps. I know I probably gave you more than you asked for, but I believe even if you're technical and you're an officer, you may not be in a position where you're I always ask the question, I can't just rely on my organization to teach me all the things I need to know. So if I'm not leading in my job, where else can I find leadership? I learned probably more things from volunteering in organizations or in the community than I did sometimes on my job. So there's always opportunity to sharpen your leadership skills, whether it's in the uniform or out of uniform. You just have to know, like Gumbo talk about being freeze dried. don't freeze it. Like exercise that skill somewhere else. And it may be in your personal time, but if you know you're not getting it at work, to me, the answer is not to not get it. Get it in other areas, and sometimes you can volunteer. I think I was the Booster Club president, and I learned more from being the Booster Club president at that time as being a lieutenant than in my job, because I had more. I mean, I had civilians. I mean, it was a larger organization that I had to lead. So I hope that helped answer the question.
Yeah, Breezy's response was you're singing her song. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think you hit it there, and her and Honey Badger are going back and forth. So that's pretty good. Watching those two go back and forth. So the next question, sir, is given the bandwidth constraints and increasing mission demand signal, what training regimen do you recommend for leaders to continue developing themselves and inspire others? So basically, you don't have a lot of time. You know, we talk about the, you know, all the different formulas, 16, 4, 6, 9, whatever, all the math that the GOs have been told to follow, that I'm sure everybody's following vociferously in terms of their sleep. So where do you fit the time? What's the regimen approach to develop your leadership and to inspire those that report to you?
To me, it just goes back to priorities. Like if you want to, whatever you want to do, you have to be more deliberate about develop like carving out the time to do it. Because we can all have the best ideas, we can all want to do something, but if we don't leave room for it in our day, it will never get done. I mean, these are facts. If you don't give it the time, it's never going to get done. Just hard cold fact. So if you know that, then now, like right now, I don't do TMT. I haven't done a TMT tasker probably in like 8 years. 8 years. I came into as a colonel. I'm not doing TMT. I mean, they're like, oh, here's your TMT account boss, and they'll go in. I'm not doing that. Why? We'll all get sucked into TMT, admin domain, and spend your time there. And while your airmen out there suffering, because you on the computer typing. So I don't do TMT. It's just one of the rules I made. Now somebody in my organization does TMT, but I don't do TMT. So as the leader, you got to understand, what is your purpose in the organization? My purpose is to inspire people. My purpose is to set a vision. My purpose is to show people I care. My purpose is to set a foundation and environment where the person that's on the outskirts that feel like they don't belong feels like they belong. My purpose is to set a condition where people want to have fun. And that takes personal engagement with people. It is not behind a desk doing TMT. Now, for the things that I do, and I saw Honey Badger's thing. So
well, we know who's doing your TMT.
I think Elizabeth, you know what? And I don't even know who does it. I don't even know who does it. And I even just recently told my staff, I was like, hey, if we got to take some risks, take the risk in TMT. I mean,
action order B.
Huh?
Action order B.
I mean, if we're going to have to take some risks, and I told them there will be some things that we're going to wish we had been in that TMT to do. But I'd rather do that than an airman feels unloved. I'd rather do that than somebody feels like they've been discriminated against. I'd rather miss out on TMT than somebody's not being retained because, they've been left out. So it's a choice. We all have choices. I tell people to choose wisely. But what we do is that I think we go into these things and we let the status quo determine what we do. We let whatever. I mean, we end up doing urgent tasks, but not important tasks. We end up going down a path that somebody else has gone down because that's what they think the job is. So I come in and I assess. Somebody talking to me about doing TMT, and I'm like, what's more important for me? 10 division, leading the Air Force kind of level stuff, and I just don't do it. I mean, and I didn't do it in group command, didn't do it in wing command, and done it in all my jobs in the Pentagon. Not even an account. Like somebody gave me an account. Okay, you give me that account. It's one of the things I tell them. And I tell people my preferences. If you send me an email, it may not get read because I'm not going to stay on my computer all the time doing emails. Because if you, to me, that's not leading. That is accepting that you're allowing the system to force you where you spend your time. So just because you receive the email, you got to answer it? No. Right? I got other important things to do than answer the email. So I don't. And I tell people. And then if you want to get me, here's my cell phone number. Text me, call me. If it's that important, and then if it's really important, call me twice. Right? But if I don't, then what I could do, I could allow it could be contractors. I could allow anybody to force me to be on my computer, on my phone, trying to answer everything that somebody sent me and miss the opportunity to change an airman's life. So we all have a choice. Choose wisely about where you want to spend your time. And I tell them my communication preferences are face-to-face, phone call, text, email. I even came up with at Wing Command, they came up with a little graphic. And I said, if you send me an email, you chose the last thing. You chose my last preference. So if you didn't get a response back, that was your choice. I told you how I'm gonna communicate. Choose wisely. So I flip it and put the burden on them. I'm telling you how I want to receive information. And I know that I have to open up my calendar for that, right? I can't tell people to talk to me and then don't let them in the door. So, but in some of these things take time. But think about it. We've all been to where we sent 5 emails to try to get the answer to the question, and I got it in 5 seconds. Why? Because I had a conversation. So it goes back to where you want to spend your time, how you want to spend your time. And so I choose. Now, many of you may not be able to do this because you may not be the boss. And I realize that. And so and again, I'm a follower too. You have to remember that now. So I have a boss too. So I have to acquiesce into the environment that I'm in. But where I can change and where I can set the tone, then I set the tone. So we're all leaders in some areas and we're all followers in some areas. And you have to choose how you want to set a condition in the areas that you are the leader and how you want to survive and work into that area as a follower. But once you know those kind of things, now you can move with energy. And that's what I try to do, is move with energy. So I hope I answered that question there.
I don't know. That was like the best 7 minutes ever. That was awesome. As a former air staffer, I wish I could have avoided TMT, but wasn't the boss. And you kind of hit on something. At least when I was actually just down the hall from where you sit right now. General Goldfein was the chief, and he used to say, "I believe in the 3D. Do only those things in which I, by my position, should do. Delegate everything else." And then he would say, "And sometimes Control Alt Delete is good for the soul." Right? Now, of course, he had rules. Other people were reading his email. It's a little bit easier. He wouldn't let us send him an email more than a page in length. He didn't like to scroll, all that kind of stuff. But he would say that, and I juxtapose that with, if you read the biography of Jeff Bezos, he said he would make 3 decisions a day in his role, and one of those is, what is he having for lunch?
Right. It's one is what now?
What is he going to eat for lunch?
Right.
Because he has other people, he's got the people to do it, right? And that's part of the policy. So I know there's another question out there, but I wanted to tease on something that I heard you say at a DT a long time ago. And it really resonated, and you gave me permission to share it with the entire community, but I'd like to kind of give your voice to it. And so diversity, equity, inclusion is something that's very important right now, and you certainly lead a lot of those efforts in the Air Force and in NCR for that. But one of the things you said at the very first DT I went to with you was, it's the phrase melting pot where it really should be a salad. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to use that as a teaser because it's really better to come from your voice. So, sir, could you give voice to that perspective?
I didn't even know you remember this stuff. Okay. So I believe most of the things that we learn probably in a nation and probably an organization are all surrounded by narratives, right? Ways that we've kind of formulate how we think. Or in the military, you can say we're, come in and see the military, come in and see the Air Force, see the world, right? And so we come up with these narratives, right, that then force us to what we do in our behavior. And so quickly, I'll just say, I just asked A1 of foundational questions around this. Why do we PCS? What's the value of PCS, right, for one? 2, how often do we need the PCS to obtain what you just told me that was the value? And three, that mean everybody in Air Force need the PCS. So right now, because we have a narrative that says, see the world, come in, see the world, we're going to PCS. And so I challenge that, right? And so by the same thing, we should challenge the narratives of our nation too. I believe our nation was, birthed in a way that we were coming from, European ideas and culture. One of those was where men were subservient to the royalty of the families, that hierarchy, and we wanted to be representative man, that we could have a representative style government. So when people came over, they wanted to shed, I think, the background from Poland and from England, from Germany, and they wanted to create a new narrative that said, this is what America means, right? And so the Great American Melting Pot, if you remember Schoolhouse Rock, anybody remember Schoolhouse Rock, right? I'm just a Bill sitting here on Capitol Hill. You may remember the Bill.
Back when you were cool.
Right. And also, I mean, and it was this, I don't know if you saw, like, I remember this cartoon where we had a pot. It was like an actual boiling pot, and people were jumping into the pot. And it was kind of gruesome if you think about it. But yeah, we jumped into the pot, right? And then you kind of melted away your background, so you can become this thing called American. And I liked it, and I still like it, right? It gives you a narrative that says that we want to be one. And we needed that narrative when we formed the nation, because we wanted to create our own identity that was separate from Europe. I think we can say mission done, narrative work. We know what it means to be an American, right? And I think also what happened in that is that people also who learn their heritage wanted to keep with some of their heritage. We still celebrate St. Patty's Day for that, right? And so there will always be, I think, heritage that comes from wherever, other nations, that will blend into American society. And we need to have room for that. And I think when we don't, then we go from creating military traditions and standards, because we should all conform to standards in the military. You can see how those standards change over time. But I think in some cases, we force people to assimilate. Being a Borg, for an example, right? We force them to assimilate to be something that really changes their composition, i.e. melting away to form something new, instead of coming into the workplace being whole, being healthy, and being authentic. And so if you heard of, code talking or switch talking, right? People switch their language, they switch their hair, they begin to, in some ways, represent who they're not. And sometimes they're not even aware of it, right? And so the diversity that I think that we need is where I'm the Native American champion. So I'm the champion for an organization called INIT. It is the Indigenous Nations Equality Team. And I have an airman, Staff Sergeant Lemire is a recruiter. And we had our first year we had a brief to the secretary. And we briefed the secretary, and Lemire talked about how he lives in two worlds every day. He lives in a world where he feels safe and comfortable, called his home, and he comes into the Air Force to work. Why? Because he's Native American, and many people don't understand, because we haven't taught them how to deal and how to lead people who are different in that formation. So he doesn't feel like he's valued in that formation. And I've met several airmen who feel the same. And so this new narrative says that we can all be in this great American salad bowl. You don't have to melt away who you are. You don't have to melt away your background, because when I talk to airmen, they're going to go home and eat the same food, talk the same stuff, right? Use the same language, whatever that may be, that's representative of their family. And we should be accepting of that, because that's where their true strength may lie, in the power that diversity can bring to solving tough challenges. And we tell them that they need to conform and move all of that to the side. I don't think we're getting the best of those airmen. They're now conforming and being lesser than who they can be. So I want an environment where airmen serve to their full potential, where we maximize their strengths, and where we give them the ability to show up to work each and every day being the authentic person that they are. And they're going to give us 100% when we do that. Right now, I know we have many airmen giving us 40%. And some people think it's their 100. That's the shame of this, is that they're giving 40, you think it's their 100, and you may be rating them low, but you, the leader, haven't given them the environment to flourish. So this Great American Salad Bowl says, I can be the blackberry in the salad, you can be the grape, somebody else can be the tomato, the cucumber. We can all be our own individual selves with our background, conforming to the standards that are inside that salad bowl, and we will continue to be a powerful fighting force. It is another narrative that gives you an opportunity to look through that lens. Again, I'm not here to get you to think like me. I am getting you here to think. Some people say they want to call it a stew because some of the residue melts away from the stew, but you can kind of still see the chunks. Whatever your narrative you want to be, I don't necessarily care. What I do care is you think about this. How can you maximize that airman's ability, that civilian's ability to come into your workplace, be their authentic self, and to give you 100% every day? And when you don't have a conversation with them. So my 3 C's are leadership, right? And this especially around D&I, is to have a curious mind, like always remain curious about things. I'm actually asking people to be more curious about the things that they know. And I'll repeat, more curious about the things that they know or think they know, because that's where your bias is. And so be curious about things. The second one is to be courageous and enter in the room with courage to introduce topics in conversation that you may want to shy away from. If it's making you feel cringe, lean into it. That's courage. We often talk about courage in the battlefield, but we're scared to have the conversation in the office, right? That's the courage we need also on the battlefield and in the office during those tough times. And then the third C is compassion. It is that C that's related to love that says, I may know not the right words. I may be a person trying to speak. I need to give somebody some compassion, some care, some I would say give them a pass perhaps on language that they may not know because they're trying to learn how to talk about things that they've never been taught. We have to know that in our society, we haven't taught these things. So people, it's foreign to them. So give people a break if they're trying to learn. They come at you with a good heart. They may not admit all the right language and the words to use, but I know if you snap back at them, they may never come back to you again. To be courageous, to have a conversation that may change. So I don't know, Gumbo, if I hit that. I know I probably gave you too much of that, but I hope I hit on the core components you remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember thinking when you said it, I was like, man, somebody should have recorded that. Now I got it. So it took me 1.5 years, but I finally got it recorded. I had to create a whole Zoomcast just to make that happen. And I'm okay with, salad, soup, stew, gumbo, that'll work.
Gumbo, there we
Hey,
go.
But we're pretty particular about what goes in the gumbo. So probably that's not, you do the filet wrong, it ain't right. You got
Okay.
too much okra. We just can't have that. No, my house is chicken, sausage, shrimp gumbo. That's what we have. That's what my.
Well, I need to come to the house then. Shoot.
Yeah, that's Christmas. It's Christmas with the Coglins. I got 10 kids now with the daughter-in-law on the way. So it's a big pot of gumbo, I should say. So, hey, sir, we've already riffed on leadership and talent for almost an hour. And so I want to turn this over to you for a little bit to provide some closing comments before I wrap it up. So over to you to provide some final pearls of wisdom from General T.A. Adams on leadership.
I would say let's just talk about love. When I did this with the if Honey Badger's still in at the a DT down at Keiser, and she left like saying I love you, right? Because I said it. And I just think there's so much to be gained from like going in at the foundational level of understanding the human spirit and connection. J.P. Parker connects with folks because he remembers all these names. He has this brilliant mind to remember names. And it's so powerful that, airmen are probably still talking about the fact that he remembered their name. So if you don't have a memory like JP and a way to try to remember names, then you have to find out where's your superpower. What do you bring to the table? What do you bring to the fight? That's different. One other thing I say, General Brown, as you talk about the things, he uses the terms delegate, iterate, and tolerate. That you need to delegate all the stuff, like you said, that you can't do. If you want to make it better, iterate to make it go faster, and then to shape it to where you want it to be. But then at some point, you just got to tolerate it. Why you got to tolerate it? Because you delegated it, right? You can't have it perfect, because if you had it perfect, then you be doing it, but then you can't do everything. So you got to delegate, you got to iterate, you got to tolerate. And so I'll get back to love. I mean, I just think it's at least for me, it opens up opportunity. The listen part of my Listen, Live, Love says if you want to learn something new, you got to listen to other people. I listen, with the ears and with the eyes, right? So there's opportunity to listen with the eyes. I believe that each day we go into a library, right? We sit next to people each and every day that's in this library. And all you got to do is open up the person to the left and the right and read them. Open them up and listen to them. And that's what we have in our formation. We often turn to books where average people have wrote them to gain knowledge, and you got a book next to you. All you got to do is open it. But what I'm talking about takes time. So I encourage people to engage in conversation with people to learn from them, and then lift them up. Like what are the things that the people want to do, not just in their professional life, but in their personal life. We're all going to take this uniform off at some point in time. And where are we going to be left? What are the things you want to focus on? Because our goals that we want for people should be what they want for themselves and their family. And some of that sometimes is incongruent with military service. And it's okay. I got out of the Army because at one time it was incongruent with what I wanted to do. It's okay to get out, right? And so we shouldn't try to hold on to people because of what we think. We should ask them the question, what do you want? And then we should lift them up toward meeting their goals, not the goals that we have for them. And the final thing, is just to circle back to love. So Listen, Live, Love kind of circles around that. And I got that conversation started from General Laura Lindemann. The final thing I want to do is just say thank you all. Each one of you, if you're in the uniform, or if you served in the past, raise your right hand to support to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You did that freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And for that, I say thank you. Where I think the recruiting numbers are, many people are not wanting to. I think we need to have a good, long conversation with America. And I think that we shouldn't wait on America to do it. We are America. So what conversations are you all having in your communities about military service? I think everybody thinks that they should just wait on somebody. There's no, there's not going to be somebody coming in on a horse to save us. We should introduce that. There's a lot of conversations now about are we developing a force out there that's going to want to come into the military? Or are we telling everybody that everybody needs a 4-year degree and everybody needs to go to college? And if you think about that narrative and if you believe that that narrative is true, then the reason why we may not be getting recruiting numbers is because we have set a society that says 4-year degrees equal success. Whether you believe that or not, we got to think about what messaging are we sending to our American people and how does that fit in with national security? Because at the end of the day, we know this thing about national security, because of your sacrifice. But the question is, in this new environment, what are we going to know collectively together, and how do we partner with American society to do that? So again, thank you for your service. Thank you for the sacrifice that you and your family have done. If I can be of any help to the 16 people that are on this call, please reach out to me. Don't be a stranger. There's always time in the day, especially when I'm not doing TMT tasks, that I may have an opportunity to talk with you all. So thanks for the time, Gumbo. I appreciate your leadership.
Yes, sir. And thanks for joining us. Yeah, this was the largest on virtual attendance one of ours. So clearly your reputation preceded you, and you did not disappoint. I take notes during these, and just a couple of them, obviously page and half full, which considering the size I write, that's a lot. But leadership is about getting people to do what you want them to do and like it. Love is the most powerful word in the English language. Don't be afraid to use it. Talent takes time. Culture eats policy for lunch. Understand strategic followership, and we're followers far more time than we're leaders. And then your preferred communication methodology. Make sure you understand that for those that you work for. But the 3 C's: be curious, be courageous, be compassionate, and then listen, lift up, and love. Hey, sir, thanks so much for your time as we talked about leadership and talent and many other topics as we went around. And one of the questions I like to ask the guests is, you said people could reach out to you. How can they reach out to you? Probably not email. So, uh, do you want them to go to someone to get your number so it's not on the line?
202-271-4998. I don't care if it's my cell phone number. I mean, I give it out in commander's call. I've done it in large formations. I find it, many people are not going to call anyway. But it's there, and I'm on LinkedIn and stuff if people want to reach out. But yeah, I mean, better is through somebody like you, right? And then I'm a texter, so I'll usually try to keep up with my text message for the most part. I do better than that than I do on my email. So it's quicker and easier for me. So
Roger that, sir. And thank you for your time. And I want to thank everybody for joining us in person or those that are listening to it as we post it to YouTube. I do want to do a teaser for Lagniappe Leadership Discussion number 8 in April. We're going to have retired Colonel Kim Casey Campbell, who is an A-10 pilot. She just dropped her book today. It's Flying in the Face of Fear, a fighter pilot's lesson in leadership. She's an A-10 pilot who lost most of her aircraft in combat and was able to go through that. Her final job was doing leadership and character development at our United States Air Force Academy. And so join us in April. I'll be sending out details about that as I work with her on her calendar, but get her book, it's available. And one final question, sir, I always try to ask is, what's a book you recommend for people to read?
The Book of Your Coworker.
That one.
Open up somebody next to you and read that book. You may find it to be very interesting.
Indeed. Thanks for that, sir. Once again, thanks for your time. Thanks for allowing Honey Badger to get you out of work at a decent hour to where you're still in uniform at a late night on the East Coast. But thanks for giving us your time, and thanks for serving our nation from Tuskegee to DC. Thanks for all your leadership, and thanks for everybody for joining us. This is Dr. Jim Gumbo Coughlin signing off, saying lead from the front.
Thanks, Gumbo. Thanks for your leadership out here.